How can you transform your hospitality business and turn insights into profits? Hello and welcome to the Boostara Podcast. I am your host, James. On the Boostara Podcast, we speak to leaders in business and uncover the truths and insights from their amazing experiences. At Boostara, we help businesses boost growth, cut costs, and gain better business insights. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you, type the word growth into the comments below, and I will be sure to reach out. Today, after a little bit of technical jigging around, I'm really happy to say we're joined by Adrian Norman, co-founder and CEO of Uniteverse. Hello and welcome, Adrian.
Hello, happy Friday, and thank you for having me as well.
And absolutely amazing to have you on. I mean, we're complaining about the weather, at least on my side, but whereabouts are you calling us from today, Adrian?
So from central London. So yeah, it's not too bad here, but I think it's starting to rain. So yeah, just in time for the weekend, right? But I guess it is that time of year. Shortest day of the week shortest day of the year isn't too far away. So once you get over that hump, hopefully it'll start getting lighter earlier February time.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm getting into Q1 and the excitement of renewed business, right?
Well, it's been such a busy couple of weeks as well before you lose everyone, because you more or less lose everyone now until the new year, don't you, with all the Christmas parties. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, we're at an interesting juncture, I think, Adrian. And I guess, for those of our listeners that are not familiar with yourself, not familiar with Uniteverse, maybe as a good starting point, could you give us a little bit of, an introduction to yourself, an introduction to Uniteverse, and, what the journey has been for you getting to where you are today?
Yeah, no, thank you. So it's been an interesting journey, a bit stressful at times, but a fun journey as well. Obviously, we've got a great team. So I have a corporate background. I worked in finance for 30 years, which is scary to say. Well, 35 now, I think, actually. I'm 50 tomorrow. And so I'm originally from Guernsey. Obviously, back in the 90s, finance was booming there. So started in the bank. I moved to London 14 years ago. Outside of work, I've always loved music, the power of connection, meeting people, memories, and all types of music. So in my sort of spare time, when I was in London, when I got to London, I think the great thing about London is you can do something different every night, different genres, different venues. And actually, the thing is the mad thing is that in London, whilst we think there's a lot going on, it's places like Liverpool and Manchester that have more live music things happening than we do in London. So I managed some musicians, some exciting up and coming musicians. And then I was on Ibiza 3 years ago at a conference, and a big electronic online store talked about making spaces safer and more accessible. And I guess my, brain always looks at problems and finds solutions. So the next day I was like, hang on a minute. Why we, there's three sort of problems with that. Safety and accessibility is different for everyone. As a white man, I never think about anything really. I probably have all sorts of stories and, gone out and done anything and not thought about it. Whereas, female friends don't even walk outside the front door, even once they've ordered an Uber to really make sure it's there. And, most of the population don't realize that there's, 6 different types of wheelchair, all these different things. So there's a lot of data there. Secondly, actually, there is some really cool stuff going on, but there's an overwhelming amount of data because you can't find stuff. And thirdly, we can't really make change unless you give data and actionable insights and bite-sized pieces for businesses to understand and get ahead of the curve. So yeah, that was kind of a good idea. And obviously I was still in finance at the time. This idea wouldn't go away. It's sort of, my heart, head and gut just told me there was life to it and we had to do something. I think really just because, the tech's there in the year 2025. And so actually, if you can just ensure that everyone has access to the same moments, the same enjoyable days and nights out, that's a no-brainer. Especially when we talk about cost of living crisis, I don't think it all just comes down to cost of living. I think, experiences aren't resonating with people anymore. They work harder than ever before. They need to access what they want for all sorts of different reasons. And so I then met the guys that are now forming the team to sort of bring this together. And they sort of turned it into a business, not just a good idea, but obviously it still does good and has impact and can disrupt. And yeah, that's kind of where we are today, really, I guess. So we started that, the idea came 3 years ago. It's obviously been a big learning curve for me. Obviously, I have all the business acumen and, sort of corporate, which actually comes in handy, I guess, when you're looking at worst case scenario risk and, sort of business. But actually on the tech side and the data side, it's been a massive learning curve. What people are actually doing with data, especially now we've got AI and obviously we use AI and all these different things. And so for me, it's been really interesting, obviously, and just how different, counterparties are interacting with this as well, be it the brands, be it the businesses, be it consumers, be it organizations and associations, and also just some of the fantastic initiatives out there as well. And the organizations really sort of coming together as communities and collaborators to really try and support change and sort of, help the industry, et cetera, as well in a constructive way. And so, yeah, so I guess we're quite excited about next year. It's been a busy year. There's been a lot going on in, personal levels as well. But actually, I think, we've sort of concentrated. It's been nice to have this as a distraction. We're ending the year well. We've obviously we have a mobile app and there's the SaaS platform. But actually, we've got some good partnerships in place. We have some good partnerships in the pipeline. And so I think hopefully we're starting to get good traction and we're starting to make the right noise and get in front of the right people. Obviously, as you know, people are busy, right? And everyone's trying to cold call, everyone's trying to email. There's a lot of tech out there. So one of the problems is just trying to be getting right in front of the right people. And actually, we were getting sort of conferences over even just a few weeks ago. And just getting in front of someone and just giving them a 3-minute demo makes them kind of go, oh, brilliant, we need this. Let's kind of work with you. So that's kind of been a bit of a game changer recently as well. And so, yeah, I hope that kind of gives you a bit of an overview of what it's all about and where we've come from. And really the idea is to, through having consumers interact more and do more, we can help them discover more. But ultimately, then we can also give that feedback to businesses to understand consumer sentiment, to understand demographics, to take away some of the gatekeeping, to really kind of get ahead of the curve. I always use the example, or two examples really very quickly. 30 years ago when you went for dinner with 20 people, there was probably one vegetarian, right? And now when you go for dinner with 20 people, there's probably 5 people that don't have dietary requirements, And of course, when you go out, it's hard to find somewhere that you should all be. But actually, as soon as one person has a bad meal, in that group of 20 people, it probably all puts them off going out again because somebody's kind of, and even just, I think, the idea of accessibility, some venues can't be accessible, but actually as long as someone knows before they go there, then they're not going to go there or have that embarrassment or be put in that situation that the group shouldn't have been put in. So I think there's some easy sort of answers, and it's really just trying to, predict stuff and get ahead of the curve. The non-alcoholic drinks, they were creeping up before lockdown. As we know, everyone drank far too much in lockdown. And then when we came out of it, obviously it skyrocketed. But actually, that was a trend before. And so I think if we can help businesses get ahead, help them predict, help them understand, then they can take more chances, which is a win-win for each side of the coin, really. Both the consumers getting what they want and businesses really being able to build that trust more. And hopefully, some of these places, sadly, at the margins, I think, we've now got the business rates. And I think people forget when they go to a pub and they spend £7, £9 on a pint and think it's expensive, that actually the businesses are getting a really small chunk of that point, right? It's actually, most of it is going to the cost of the building, the staff, the business rates, and all this other stuff. And so I think, the more we can get people out, the better. But I think the more we can really understand what people want more is better as well, especially when you look at the numbers of, 1 in 4 people identify as having some form of impairment. That's a big chunk, and you probably have lost those communities. And the irony is, as much as we're talking about tech and we're talking about the great stuff it can do, actually, tech has made the world a lonelier place and it has had its own problems. So yeah, very high sort of level there. But just to sort of give you an overview of where we're thinking, where we've got there. So it's been fun. I probably lost a bit of hair while doing it as well, a bit stressful, but yeah, really enjoyed it. And actually when I get the opportunity to talk about it, you get excited again about it as well.
I find it absolutely fascinating, and I think we discussed on our previous discussions, how this benefits both, the consumer and the business, right? There's benefits for both, which is beautiful when something can be, and is the way it should be in any kind of businesses. There should be benefits on both sides. But I guess a good kind of question for you is, on both sides, are people seeking this kind of solution? Are they seeking this kind of insights and data? You mentioned how our dietary requirements maybe from 20, 30 years ago, it's changed to what you might see in a restaurant and how that's dealt with. I guess, our restaurants, our, hospitality businesses looking for this kind of solution, or is it a case of they just don't know that this is something that they could have access to?
I think it's interesting. I think there's a few points on there, and you're quite right. I think firstly, sometimes, countries themselves can be slow to adopt technology. I think the UK can sometimes be that. I think sectors can sometimes be as well. There is obviously an additional subscription cost. And when you add all these subscriptions to different things every month, they can add up. But I think actually, once people start seeing the gaps, that to use our platform on the back end where we aggregate all of this data and give it back to you. And you can have this one-stop view, universal view of the world. And actually, you may think that everything's great, right? But you're not the consumer. That's your business and that's your baby. But actually seeing that there's maybe on this traffic light system a red mark, actually the red mark's kind of giving you also the problem, but the solution to it as well, what you can do to address that. So it's not, just giving you another headache. But actually, you might not know that was there. Now, if somebody's left that, then that's maybe 100, 1,000 people that you've lost coming back in because of that. But also, that may be a problem that your regulars might come back, but you're not attracting new audiences because of that problem. So actually, it's kind of an MOT almost on your business, which fills those gaps. I also think when you speak to the consumers, funny enough, when I speak to a lot of the 20-year-olds, actually, they really love what the app can do. That app is about discovery. It's about, and look, they've got a voice. They want change. They want to find stuff, and they want to meet like-minded people and find their tribe and all this kind of thing as well. And I think, again, especially when we go back to females, minorities, communities, for me more than ever. So I can do pitches, pitch nights, and in the room generally it's a lot of white men, but actually the women come up to me after and they're like, "This is great. We need this. We would use this. We've been longing for this." And, most of those white men that have kind of not really paid any attention probably have daughters or sisters or wives, right? And those are the females that are experiencing problems on a night out or why they don't go out. And so, it's a big space, it's something that needs to be addressed. And you can only address that through quantifying and getting the data and getting the numbers. As much as we complain maybe about councils and government, etc., on a local level or a national level, actually, again, like any business, they're not going to be able to take action unless they have figures, and everything's an estimate or a survey. But if you can actually say, by the way, you're telling us roughly 10%, and through the data we've got, it's 50%, you need to act, and you need to act now. That's where you start to see change, which is part of the greater impact of data. I think as well, though, again, the consumer side as well, you can also, we've got this, all the ads we see on social media, and we get bombarded with ads and bombarded with emails. Actually, you can start to get to know people, right? If they only drink Lucky Saints, if they only do this and they only do that, and actually get the brands in front of the right people and take away all the noise. For me, it's about taking away this noise and saving people time. And especially in an age where so many more people are now conscious of sustainability, actually maybe get those right brands that are new or smaller, and their cost of acquisition for ads are to the right people, because we've discovered who the demographic profile and really know what they want better than before. I also think, when you get in front of people and do your research, it is amazing the amount of things that are going on in the world, and the scams and the experiences. And actually, a lot of friends, when we sat in front of some potential investors a few months ago, and actually 2 of the ladies around the table said their boyfriends had allergens, and they were allergic to different things. And the majority of time when they went to restaurants, the staff serving them didn't really understand what the allergies were and had to go and speak to. And I think, again, that's not anyone's fault, but it's the fact that there's so much information in the world, right? And so, you almost need that resource tool to make it smaller, to really educate. But I think also just, get people to the right places. I think for me, it's about really understanding and really just easily being able to identify these things and, get in front of it, but actually not make people's life more difficult. I think, again, it's that thing is that when you go on Google and you search for something, you just get overwhelmed. Whereas actually, if you went to someone and said, well, how did someone deal with this? Or how do we do this? And it's just the answers there, then you're solving the problem of saving those people time, because people are busy, and you can't expect some of these staff that probably don't get paid or maybe get paid minimum wage to care. But actually, you've then got the management above them, the owners above them. And if you can make all that smaller and they can educate and train better and get reminders, or just, simply remind staff a lot better. Because again, it's an industry which is transient, especially in certain areas. It's students working, high turnover. So again, you've got all these costs and all these additional infrastructure around it. So yeah, it's not an easy one, but I think actually trying to connect those dots, bring it together, actually is kind of, a no-brainer, I guess, really, from in some respects. I'll probably make it sound much easier than it is, but actually the simplicity of it is there in some respects. It's obviously just the more you can get people to use it, the more everyone can learn. I think even, businesses, for example, a small pub up in Yorkshire probably isn't going to have the stock, the money maybe to take a chance on stock. But if, again, you can see there's trends of, this non-alcoholic drink is doing really well there, they're more likely to be able to take a chance on that stock and it sell rather than waste money. So there's all these other bits around the sides where these insights and data points can really sort of help people, get to where they need to get to.
Yeah, yeah. And I can imagine in, 2025 now, where it's not easy running a restaurant, a pub, a bar, any business in hospitality. Um, and everyone, I think you mentioned it previously, everyone's much more critical about what they're paying for, which rightly so. You said what, like 7, 8, 9, £10 a pint, right?
Yeah.
Which for me, I'm like, oof. I still
Well,
remember university being a pound a pint.
I still remember
And
kind of getting one,
it was
even
less than that.
well, yeah, even before lockdown, I still remember in some places, you could kind of get 2 pints for under a tenner and get change, right? And
Yeah,
now
yeah,
that feels kind of, unless you're in sort of somewhere that feels impossible. And I think, and yeah, costs go up, but actually, I think it's one where if more people were maybe going out, maybe
yeah.
they would come down. Or also, again, there's, I've seen on social media probably over the last 2 months actually. Do you remember BYOB, Bring Your Own
Mm,
Bottle? I think it was an 80s thing they did that. Anyway, that's been creeping up. You've seen a few clubs up north and places up north starting to do that. And again, so if I'm seeing that on social media, why aren't other people kind of just getting an easy little, notification? Maybe there's places that could do that to kind of get
yeah,
people through the door. So I think there are some quick wins.
yeah,
But I think again, it's those sort of, just making it easy for people to understand. And I think, you know, but also businesses, as we know, generally in certain sectors of hospitality, are busy on a Friday and Saturday, and
mm,
they're quiet on a Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. But actually, maybe some of the communities you don't currently have coming in, whether that be because they are neurodiverse, because they have an impairment, actually there is probably a way to bring them in on those other nights and give them access to community and networking, which they've currently potentially lost in some areas.
mm,
And actually, then you also are, uh, getting your venue busy on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on a day when she was not really being used. And so there's all
yeah,
these other things which I think can be done,
mm,
and actually which should be done.
yeah, yeah. And it comes down to analyzing the numbers, analyzing the insights, and then being able to, with that, improve the user experience, right? The customer
Definitely.
experience. And from the customer experience, it comes back to profits, right? And
Well, it does. I mean, it's like that one, I mean, my parents, they probably wouldn't have gone out. They stayed down in Canterbury for a while, and they may have only just gone for dinner at a certain time because they didn't want to be out in High Street at different hours because it was too boisterous or too loud or
mm,
too drunken, right? But again, there may have been places where, kind of through that discovery that maybe was a nice little place that wasn't too noisy. And I do think that, especially now you should be able to, and this is the idea of the app, going back to that, is that actually, if you are female and you only drink Lucky Saint because non-alcoholic, and
mm,
you need a car park 200 meters away because that's, you're safe, and you, can't deal with stray lights or certain, that
yeah,
you should be able to put that internet in the palm of your hand and only be shown wherever you go in the world, those places, those authentic places, because you're going to have a good time. But also when you go there, that probably means you're more likely to meet people like you, which is a connection, which is something that we have also lost, right? And then I think, kind of seeing all that and then noticing all that, you will then share that experience with other people, which will make other people go there. And
mm,
because it's still the word of mouth, no matter what you do with tech, the word of mouth is more powerful than anything else as well,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so I think you can do some of these things. I think it is really just understanding it. And I think, we have sadly lost, some of that just because of the experiences. And look, I'm in London. You can go somewhere and you can pay a pricey meal sometimes, and just one thing puts you off going back, right? And if that was me, as I said, that's probably thousands of other people. And if you change that, then actually you probably maybe stand potentially to keep those people as well coming back.
amazing. Yeah. Would you be able to elaborate maybe on a client that's taken on the app and they've managed to kind of get these kinds of insights that's changed the way that they run their business?
Yeah, so at the moment we've kind of been focusing more on the back end of the platform so obviously we have the app for the consumer. The back end of the platform is the SaaS product, the B2B SaaS product. So that's where businesses we set them up, then they go in and they have that view of all the data that's out there in the world. And obviously we take that from review sites. We obviously take it from social media. So they get that, sort of full view of what people think through a
Mm,
nice traffic light system. They can interact with the data, which I think is really important because, it's not just a report or a dashboard. It's actually interrogate the data, ask questions, again, get validation. And so that makes it more real and comforting as well. I think it reassures. And then there's various ways to look at that. So we currently have a couple of nightclubs on there. We've also, funnily enough, been speaking to a couple of members clubs and a couple of football stadiums. And so the feedback we are getting is that, look, this just is what they've been looking for. Where the app kind of comes into play again is that if as a business you then use the app too and tell your consumers or patrons to use the app, the interesting thing is that you get even more data. So obviously we're giving you all the data in one place, but actually through the app, and I think it's important as well, is that we don't ask for personal information. So your address and your phone number is of no interest to us. We don't need it. We just need a profile of you, how you identify within your diverse, when you have any impairments. And so once we build that profile, obviously then we can, match you to people, tell you what other people similar to you were saying about an event or a venue to discover it. And then from there, obviously, as you know, if you place Facebook ads, what happens is you don't get the granularity of data. You get male, female, and age, these different things. But actually, by using the app, you then get to know how many people came through your door that identified in a certain way or had impairments. So you would really get granularity and understand your consumer better than before. Obviously, within the SaaS as well, what we can then do is tell you how many data points we found to build this picture for you. And also, the kind of traffic light system enables you to have good PR stories if you turns from, amber and red to green, etc. And I think helps teams as well. Look, we know it's tough out there, but I think everything kind of comes down on P&L, right? Whereas actually, if you can kind of see, well, as a management team, we've been doing this and this is what people are saying, and we switched this to green, that's also now a new data point for people to look at and go, actually, maybe we should invest in you a bit more. We should give you a few more opportunities as well. So we've been working with a few different businesses and really sort of, we've got a few testimonials. We've got a sort of cocktail bar that's given us some stuff as well and just said, look, again, there were gaps on there that they didn't realize were happening. But also just that, it's really where it just allows them to understand that better than before in black and white visually, that they weren't having.
Well, very, very interesting. You mentioned AI a couple of times before. I mean, it's a bit of a broad question, but where do you, what do you see the impact AI having, more generally within, the hospitality space and the way that you're now working?
So do you know, I think it's a great thing, in the sense of obviously, look, I mean, maybe one day it'll be Terminator, who knows? But actually, I do think right now, I mean, even personally, so I can put things off personally, right? Especially when we're having to do presentations and pitches, and you bang it into ChatGPT, obviously when it's on private mode. And obviously it just gives you ideas, you don't get, it takes away that brain block or a new way of answering something. But I do think for an industry which probably to some degree has relied on people thinking they, have always known it to be what it is. So especially if you, obviously having done the music side, I've been to a few events or put on a few events at different places, and, people like to think they know their consumer or who comes in, and I'm sure they do because those are the regulars, but, they don't know outside of that necessarily. But I think also, as much as you do know, you're still busy. You can't spend all your time with them. Actually, you've still got all these pressures and different things to run. So I think the more you can kind of actually sort of let them know that there's a new tool there that kind of helps support their decisions or validates their decisions, or actually just gives them a bit of evidence, or just lets them know they're getting it right where they're getting it wrong, then that's kind of where it's really powerful. And look, it is an industry which is under immense pressure and has been for some time. And I don't think that's going to ease up potentially, given governments, etc., and cost of living. But I think where, the more they can rely on tech to some degree to give them these answers, is, it's invaluable because, on a personal level, sometimes when I'm doing stuff, it's like having a research team, it's like having 6 or 12 people looking at something for you. And so it just gives you so much extra capacity. And I think even in that space, it can just tell you a lot more of what's going on. It can, even look at, especially some of the other tech, obviously we've got our tech, but even when you see some of the other tech out there, and where we are, for me, it's all about partnerships and collaborations as well. We would love to work with other tech, because I think then, if you can work with other providers and almost build this 360, of different things, the full sort of cycle, then I think that's really interesting as well, because conscious that people are busy, if you've got 50 people trying to sell you something, that's a full-time job in itself. But if you can have one person kind of get in front of you and say, look, this is what we do. And actually, by the way, if you like us, then speak to this person, this person, this person, and we come in because obviously it's mass, it's probably better cost. There's all these things you can do. Then actually that becomes an even more exciting aspect
Mm,
because we can do even more when we all work together. But I
mm,
think AI for me, I think it's allowed us to do this. And it will allow us to do a lot more. I think, on that case, obviously that all comes back down to funding and investment. The more we have, the more we can do.
yeah.
But I think it really is just that bit where it's going to really help free up time to do other things, or actually just when some of these people aren't getting paid. Some of these business owners in certain music venues probably aren't even paying themselves minimum wage. They're probably
Mm,
out of pocket. It's probably costing them each month. But actually, if there's things there which are any tool which can help them, it's a no-brainer. But I also think where AI being able to really analyze data, visualize it, make it make sense. A lot of these things, look, I'm not a techie, by the way. I just have the ideas. I have lots of ideas. But
yeah.
actually, if you can just give me one piece of paper which shows me what's happening, what I should do, what it means, then that's a no-brainer, right? Because it can just speak to me as if I'm just getting a WhatsApp bite size, and it makes the simplicity of it perfect and ideal, really. Because we don't want to be bogged down with all these numbers and all this intel.
Yeah.
We just need to understand it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I think the beauty of what you're providing there. It's a potential of layers of marginal gains, which when you put them all together, it can be quite a lot, right?
Well,
And then
definitely, yeah.
use other tools on top of that, ask the right questions, and then you're compounding, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it's joy. So I was in Guernsey a few months ago, and obviously it's small over there. There's 62,000 people. You can drive around in an hour. Great place, very proud of it. But when I was back there, I had someone I used to work with, and I was chatting away to him. And there's a nightclub over there, and they'd surprisingly, it surprised me actually. They'd now open on Friday evenings because
uh,
obviously they're in decline as well. And so on Friday evenings, they now put on rock bands or bands to perform. And so he lives on the island, and he'd never heard of this. He'd never heard that this place in Guernsey, which is a small place, now started doing rock bands. And he said he'd had the best night out he'd had in absolutely ages because he's a bit older. And so there are so many people, there are so many things, and they're not getting connected. They're not matching up because people don't know they're there and they're happening. And it's the same. So, the more you can try and match those, then that's a win for everyone, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so I think that's why I get excited about it, is what it can do there, because we are missing opportunities. And
yeah.
there is so much noise. And people don't have time. So the more you can, make that kind of happen and try and deal with that, the better it is, I think, all around.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Amazing. I mean, I ask this question to everyone that comes on. Just with your kind of your knowledge of AI automation and your business, if you could get exactly that AI automation, any kind of tech, to just take one part of your job, your day to day, it's just off your hands. You don't have to deal with that. What would have the biggest impact on yourself and Uniteverse?
Probably dealing with investors. No, that probably no. To be honest, kind of probably the bit, I guess that's probably it's a personal one, isn't it? I guess, because it's what
Mm,
probably maybe the bit I don't like. I guess the bit I don't like is probably well, I like all of it, but actually, I guess the bits maybe I'm not as good at is when you deal with the sales side or the
yeah,
investment side, if that makes sense. Obviously, I just being a business head, I just want to get on and do business, come up with ideas, push things forward. So I guess, yeah, if someone could just take care of sales and getting investors on board, that would be amazing. But I think again, the irony of that is that you want to speak to people, you don't want tech to replace that too much.
yeah,
Even on a personal level, let's be honest, I've had enough of Vodafone because they're for a communication company, trying to get hold of them is absolutely horrific. And so I think probably going back to that, the bit where I think actually on a serious note that it could do really great stuff and really be help is just on the day-to-day basis. So in the sense of obviously, if I have a lot of calls or a lot of meetings, you're missing out on catching up all the emails. So almost
mm,
it's that bit of at the end of the day, almost getting to that stage where actually, something kind of knows you and kind of has maybe made the notes, done a file note, added it to the spreadsheet. So almost through that day, the workflow of the life cycle is where you get to the end of the day.
yeah,
I don't think it's necessarily reply to emails. I don't know if I'm keen on that just yet. I think it's still nice to have
mm,
a personal touch to it or make sure it's getting it right. You don't want any mistakes. But I think just something whereby actually maybe we've just come up with another business idea, by the way, but actually where, you just have this kind of, on your phone, and it kind of knows what you're doing all day, and by the end of it, it's done your finance, done your notes, prepared the emails for you to check, and actually kind of just got that so that, you're not at the end of the day having to then spend 5 hours, doing all the follow-ups and sort of, maybe missing stuff. I think that kind of almost that online AI PA might be quite a cool thing, actually.
But it's the monotonous activities, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That waste so much. It's like me today, actually, on my personal email. I get so many spam emails come through.
Yeah.
And I do it every week. I wait until it gets up to like 100, 200 spam. And then I'm like, oh, God, I've got to delete all of these.
Yeah,
So I go through, tick.
Would you? I haven't
I
deleted.
could have an AI bot that will just, I mean, you have your spam box anyway, which is supposed to do that, but you get stuff that come into your normal.
It's funny you say this, because
that you're not going to open and you're not going to read.
Well, I haven't deleted, so I can tell you now that on my Gmail, I have 402,000 emails which appear as unread. But what I did realize on Gmail the other day, actually, as I was on a train, is that there is actually an unsubscribe button at the top of the email. So now all I've done for the last 5 days since noticing that is press unsubscribe to everything. And actually already I only get about 10 emails that I actually need to look at every day. So that's quite cool.
Brilliant. Yeah, but I think you're in chime with a lot of what people have contributed on this podcast. It's the monotonous. If you do it more than 3 times in the day, those kinds of tasks that should be automated should be taken off your plate, because the highest value activities are talking to people, are speaking to people, are going to venues, are developing those relationships.
Well, I've always said this. I've said this for years, even before kind of AI, the AI thing really kicked in, is that actually for me, technology yes, it's improved things. Yes, it should have an effect on cost and all this sort of stuff. But where I think the world went a bit mad, obviously capitalism, is great, or probably the right form for now, I guess. But, ultimately technology should never have been about having mass layoffs and replacing people. It should be about improvement, but bringing people back. So for example, if you are a big blue chip and you give new technology and all of this, then actually, put those staff back to not having these ridiculous call centers where actually they can just speak to people again. I always think it's interesting when you get these supermarkets now that have these tills just to speak to old people, because they're, and I think, even I detest these self-service tills in shops. Just bring people back, honestly. And so I think it's this bit where technology for me shouldn't just have been about people making more money. It should have been about making it better, but also letting people speak to each other again, and not having this kind of bit where people have to get frustrated or waste their time hanging around for half an hour on calls. Just make it a better place in that sense, really, and bring back a bit of normality to it.
Yes, it's interesting actually you mentioned that, because we've had a big thing with AI receptionists recently.
Oh, really?
It's becoming much more popular and sophisticated, and I think for a lot of businesses, it's a lot are on the fence on whether to or not, because obviously the benefit of it is, let's say Vodafone, right? You call through Vodafone and an AI receptionist answers, that will immediately go through, okay, what's the issue, what's the problem, all of the maybe the qualification type questions or the understanding questions, to then book in with a human that's going to call back at a specific time, right? Say for Vodafone, but it can be true for the dentist, your garage, whatever, like they're busy or it's out of hours, call through, and that AI receptionist is going to book you into a calendar for a callback or for an actual appointment. That's a benefit in one way, because the customer gets dealt with immediately, right? And there's no hanging around. But then the flip side is, what will they think about the business if an AI and not a human is interacting? And it's because obviously if you as a consumer, you've been dealt with straight away, then at least it's been advanced onto the next step. Maybe that is positive, but then the negative of maybe my issue is more complex, right?
Well, this is the problem. I was about to say every issue I've ever had is more complex than so I think if you've got these simple vanilla But, mine are literally, I need to speak to someone now. And actually, so you waste this kind of 3 minutes having this chat with this. I've worked out a few little ways to get past it. If you phone them, you just press zero loads of times and it puts you straight through to someone. There's a few little life hacks. But actually, yeah, for me, it's that bit where there should almost just be that bit as well, which says, do you just need to speak to someone? Because otherwise you've wasted all this time. But yeah, I think you're right. I think in that situation, look, it's going to speed it up. But the majority of the time it's just somebody who maybe doesn't understand something. And, unfortunately, they don't know well enough yet that actually this problem, it's still very much the commands, this command, this command, this command. And if you fall outside of that command, then you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, exactly. um, Adrian, for the next kind of I suppose period going into Q1 next year, what have you got coming up? What's in the pipeline for yourself and Uniteverse?
So at some point it'd be nice to have a holiday, look, but no, I think for us, we've got some exciting partnerships actually coming up. We've got some exciting conversations with quite a few different business types, and also not just in the UK, internationally as well, actually, which is really exciting because I think, again, the more we can do that, the more we sort of learn from other jurisdictions and see things, which is really cool. And then we have sort of citywide pilots in a few different places as well, rolling out, which I think is again really valuable to both them locally and us as well. And then I think expanding the team at some point, but obviously where we can't do it with where tech can't do it. So yeah, get some sales involved because I think that would be really interesting as well. And for me, that sort of piece is about giving people a chance, from whatever background they come from as well. Obviously, I sort of dropped out of school at 16, so it's getting people that maybe do need a chance to give everyone a chance. We're all about accessibility, safety and inclusivity and stuff as well. But yeah, just really trying to get this into as many places as possible because I think the more people that use it, the more we can do and the more we can really sort of achieve. So I'm under no illusions that it's going to be a busy year and a tough year. But I think for us, it's just really keeping on the foundations we've built, getting these partnerships out, getting people using it and really trying to get many people to hear the name, sort of collaborate and partner with us and sort of do great things as possible, really. So, yeah.
Amazing. I mean, who is a kind of ideal partner, an ideal, client for yourselves? Are you restricted geographic location? You mentioned international there, or is it really anyone and anyone?
Yeah, anyone and everyone. Yeah, the more the merrier. I think for us, it's where if we can get them on there, happy to. And again, the more sort of people we get earlier as early adopters as well, fantastic. Sort of look at working with them. So yeah, anyone and everyone we can do. I think for me, it's almost getting to the stage of obviously we've started in the whole hospitality, nightlife, live music, but actually almost then doing the whole kind of so you fly to Madrid. You almost have the whole, right, well, when you land in Madrid, from the moment you land in Madrid, what do you do so the moment you leave? Whether that be tourists, hotspots, whether that be cafes, whether that be music, theatre. So actually almost building it out to even further and more of what you may do for not just you or your kids, etc. as well. So yeah, lots of exciting plans, a few little disrupting plans as well. A few plan Bs just to help push the thing along. But yeah, no, anyone, everyone, really, listen, I just love chatting to people and learning from people, finding out more, sharing that knowledge and how we can sort of all try and achieve things together, really, because I think it's just so important not to lose these things that we all love doing and socializing and not to sort of lose them, really.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I would highly encourage, anyone that's listening that is, in hospitality, do reach out to Adrian, because I think this opportunity, at the stage, that you're at, I can only imagine that the platform is going to develop and become much more sophisticated. So getting involved now, there's no point in waiting. You want those marginal gains now, and you want to take yourselves on this journey of developing your business and getting the most that you can out of it.
Well, definitely. Well, I also think we just learn from people as well. So it's how we shape it. Is whether we, it helps us with our market, where we go next, what we don't do next, or where we align it all, the roadmap. But I also think, just very quickly going back to as I say, females, minorities, communities, all these different people who experience different things, who, know these different things that I haven't experienced or don't know about, and all those networks where again, I think when we first spoke as well, you mentioned about, and I'd only heard of this a few months ago as well, women runners not being able to go out in the dark and all these different things, and this is a serious problem, right? This isn't something that's going to go away unless we tackle it, and the more we tackle it, the more we come together on it, the more we can do. And I think, again, educating everyone, because again, I'd only heard of that a few months ago, you mentioned it, and so look, I'm 49 and I hadn't heard of that, and so these things should be where we raise awareness of it and we let people know about it, and we can verify that and validate that as well, I think is also really interesting and really exciting, and it's just a no-brainer, and more than that, it's needed. This shouldn't be happening. We can be part of that solution to change it as well.
Yeah, you only know what you know, right?
Exactly, and of course, there's so
and if
much
you don't
now
know
as
it, you
well.
don't know it, right? So that's the
Yeah.
the platform, right?
Yeah. Well, this is it. It is. But there's just so much, isn't there? I mean, it's impossible to keep up with everything nowadays as well, So I think it's where, but we miss so much because of it. And the algos don't help that on social media sometimes either, right? You look at one thing to do with something, next thing you get another 20 reels about the exact same thing, even though you might not want to watch that thing. So I think, the more you can verify and validate, and really know that it's trusted. And again, when it comes back to that whole review space, we know things are manipulated. We know, I think Italy was trying to ban fake reviews a few months ago. I don't know where they got with that. So there is this bit of now people needing to trust the information, and people being aligned with modern culture and in what we really want to see and what we need.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. You mentioned that, because that's I've heard that over the years. Well, people putting on fake reviews to build their business up, but
Yeah.
that's not setting you up to win, is it? Because you want to have what are the actual real reviews, so you can
Well,
tackle
exactly.
actual problems, so you can actually strongly grow your business, right?
But there was one, I'm sure there was one, wasn't there one actually, now we talk about this, we could probably talk for days, by the way, but actually there was one a couple of months ago where somebody had set up online cafe. It wasn't a real cafe. And actually they got thousands of reviews online about this cafe, which wasn't even a real place.
Huh.
I'm sure I'll dig it out and I'll send it to you. But yeah, there was something like that. Whereas, like you say, this is happening. And again, that's where we're very careful. Everyone that signs up, we do a bit of due diligence on to make sure that no one is just setting up something fake that they can lure people to, etc. All that kind of jazz.
Amazing. What are the best contact details to reach you on, Adrian?
So my email address is Adrian, ADRIN, at Uniteverse, UNITVRSE.app. And then, if you email me on there, or our website obviously is uniteverse.app as well. And definitely get back to you, or definitely, please get in touch. I'd love to hear from people.
Brilliant. I will put the contact details below.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your time as well. I love chatting, and I love these discussions.
Yeah. No, well, it's been amazing having you on, Adrian. I guess as kind of conclusion to the podcast, some of the sort of key takeaways, especially for myself, I'd say number one, insights. It's for any business, I think everyone is very clear. You need to look at your data. You need to look at your numbers to understand strategically how you're going to grow your business.
Yeah.
I believe hospitality is in a very different kind of space where it's not necessarily about growth, but you still need to look at your data. You still need to know the insights of your customers and know where you can improve to, like we said, get those marginal gains, which actually can compound and become quite significant, especially in in these years where it is tough, running a business in hospitality. And I'd say, number two, you said it very clearly there. When it comes to AI, anything that can take away those monotonous activities, those very boring tasks, not lower level, lower value type tasks, then that we should encourage. And where we can use AI to elaborate on our insights, elaborate on our data, then we should use those tools, because again, it's marginal gains that can become much bigger.
Definitely. And I think once you start having that slight of a gain, though, it's like anything, isn't it? You have that gain, it drives you on to have more gain. Kind of things improving always end up being a positive attitude, positive mental attitude on you as well, because you see this improvement, so you push even harder and you get more, so actually when things are all kind of, negative or slightly down, that's not good for anyone. But actually when you start seeing that little bit of gain, I think it almost gives everyone that sort of, eggs them on to do even more, which is where, that you kind of need that sort of, that psychology of it all as well. And I think also just, when it comes to that safety and accessibility piece, it also helps remove that tokenism sometimes, It's not actually about saying, oh, look, we believe we're safe, we believe they're accessible. Do the consumer think that? Right. And if they don't think that, then you risk that reputational risk of not getting it right either. So actually, by knowing that this is, they do feel safe and they do believe it's accessible, actually it's not tokenism. You have that trust, because once you've lost that trust, you've lost that consumer. So actually, having built that trust, having built that, it all comes back to community, right? And I think there's always that really interesting one. Defected have done really well, the music because I had a really interesting talk by Simon, the founder, once. And, he sort of said he'd read this book called Tribes. It's all about tribes. It's all about community. It's all about, and so, that's a really powerful thing that can't be underestimated when people come together and do that stuff. And so I think having this whereby, a business is no different. If you have that community, they're going to come back, they're going to support you, and they're going to tell people. And that's when everyone kind of wins as well.
Yeah. Amazing. Brilliant insights, Adrian. Absolutely fantastic having you on today.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much.
Brilliant. And everyone listening, thank you very much for listening. Please do like and share this video so we can get this message out to as many people as possible.